Imagine waking up tomorrow and everything you know is gone. No smartphone on your nightstand, no Netflix, no Instagram, no Google. Your alarm clock? It's not digital. It's a loud, mechanical thing that actually rings, like physically rings, with bells inside. And here's the thing, you don't hit snooze. Because snooze buttons? Yeah, those don't exist yet. Welcome to 1955 America, a world so different from today that if you were dropped there right now, you'd think you landed on another planet. But here's what's crazy. The people living in 1955, they thought they were living in the future. They thought they had it all figured out. So, what was it actually like? What did a normal, regular, ordinary day look like for the average American in 1955? Well, let's find out. Okay, so picture this. It's 5:30 inches the morning, and the sun isn't even up yet. But Dad? Oh, Dad's already awake. See, in 1955, the average American father woke up somewhere between 5 and 5:30 a.m. every single day. No weekends off, no sleeping in till noon, none of that. And the first thing he does? He doesn't check his phone, obviously. Instead, he reaches over to that loud, obnoxious alarm clock and he turns it off manually. Then, he just lies there for a second. Maybe stares at the ceiling, and then he gets up. Now here's where it gets interesting. The bathroom situation in 1955 was different. Most middle-class homes had one bathroom, just one, for the entire family. Mom, Dad, 2 or 3 kids, all sharing one bathroom. So Dad has to be quick. He's got maybe 15 minutes before Mom needs it. He splashes cold water on his face. And I mean cold. Because in many homes, hot water wasn't instant. You had to wait for it. Sometimes minutes. Then comes the shave. Now, pay attention here, because this is important. In 1955, men didn't use electric razors. Well, some did, but most used safety razors, the kind with actual razor blades that you had to replace. And shaving cream? It came in a tube or a jar. None of these fancy pressurized cans. You had to work it into a lather yourself, with a brush. A literal brush made of badger hair. Sounds tedious, right? But here's the thing. Men in 1955 actually enjoyed this ritual. It was their moment, their quiet time, before the chaos of the day. Kind of nice when you think about it. Anyway, after shaving, Dad puts on his clothes. And this is where things get really different from today. In 1955, men didn't wear jeans to work. They didn't wear sneakers. They didn't wear t-shirts. No, no, no. The average working man wore a white dress shirt, starched, crisp, clean, a tie. Yes, a tie. To a factory job sometimes. Dress pants, usually gray or brown, leather shoes, polished, every single day. Even factory workers dress better than most office workers do today. That's just how it was. Now, while Dad's getting ready, something magical is happening downstairs. Mom is awake. Actually, let me correct that. Mom has been awake, probably since 5 a.m., maybe earlier. See, in 1955, the American housewife had a job, a real job, an unpaid, unrecognized, absolutely exhausting job. And it started before everyone else woke up. By the time Dad comes downstairs, Mom has already made the coffee. And not with a Keurig, with a percolator, a metal pot that sat on the stove and took 10 to 15 minutes to brew. She started breakfast. And we're not talking about a bowl of cereal. We're talking about a full, hot, sit-down breakfast. She set the table with actual plates and actual silverware and cloth napkins. Oh, and she's already dressed, hair done, light makeup on, because God forbid anyone see her looking disheveled. The pressure on women in 1955 was intense. They were expected to look perfect, act perfect, be perfect, all while doing the work of about 3 people. But anyway, breakfast. So, what did Americans eat for breakfast in 1955? Well, it depended on the day, but a typical weekday breakfast might include eggs, scrambled, fried, or poached, bacon or sausage, toast with butter, real butter, orange juice, freshly squeezed sometimes, coffee for the adults, milk for the kids, and everyone sat down together at the table. No phones, no TV, just the family. Dad reads the newspaper, the actual, physical newspaper that was delivered to the doorstep that morning. Mom makes sure the kids eat. The kids? They're dressed for school. And again, they're dressed well. Boys wore collared shirts, sometimes ties, dress pants, or neat slacks. Girls wore dresses or skirts. No pants. Pants on girls were controversial. Yeah, really. And everyone's hair is combed. Neat. Tidy. Looking at a 1,955 family at breakfast is like looking at a magazine ad. Everything is so put together. But here's something people don't talk about. It was exhausting. Keeping up appearances in 1955 was a full-time job in itself. The social pressure to look respectable was enormous. If your kids looked messy, people talked. If your lawn was overgrown, people talked. If your wife wasn't dressed nicely at 7 a.m., oh, people definitely talked. The 1,950 seconds were judgmental. Very, very judgmental. Okay, so breakfast is done. It's about 7:15 a.m. now. Dad finishes his coffee, kisses Mom on the cheek, and heads out the door. And this is where we need to talk about the car. In 1955, the average American family owned one car, just one. And that car, it was a thing of beauty. We're talking about vehicles like the 1,955 Chevrolet Bel Air, the Ford Fairlane, the Chrysler New Yorker. These weren't just cars. They were rolling works of art. Chrome everywhere, fins in the back, two-tone paint jobs, wide white walls on the tires. And they were huge. See, cars in 1955 didn't have things like fuel efficiency concerns. Gas was about 23 cents a gallon, 23 cents. So these cars had massive V8 engines. They guzzled gas, and nobody cared. Now, Dad gets in his car, turns the key, and the engine roars to life. But here's something interesting. He doesn't put on a seatbelt, because there are no seatbelts. Well, some cars had them, but they were optional, and almost nobody used them. Airbags? Absolutely not. Anti-lock brakes? Nope. Power steering? Maybe, if you were lucky. Driving in 1955 was genuinely dangerous. Fatal car accidents were way more common than today. But people didn't really think about it. It was just normal. So Dad backs out of the driveway. And let me paint you a picture of what he sees. The neighborhood in 1955 is quiet, peaceful, almost eerily so by today's standards. The houses are all similar, neat little boxes with neat little lawns, most of them built in the last 10 years as part of the suburban boom. There are kids walking to school. Yes, walking, by themselves, even the little ones. An 8-year-old walking half a mile to school alone was completely normal. There's the milkman making his rounds. Actual glass bottles of milk delivered right to your doorstep. There's the mailman, on foot, with a leather bag over his shoulder. And everyone waves at Dad as he drives by, because everyone knows everyone. This is a community. Now, the commute itself. In 1955, traffic wasn't really a thing. At least, not like today. Yes, there were traffic jams in big cities, but for the average suburban American, the drive to work was smooth. No GPS, though. Dad knows the route by heart. He's driven it 1,000 times. The radio is on. Maybe he's listening to Perry Como or Frank Sinatra, or maybe the morning news, which is delivered in this calm, measured, trustworthy tone. None of the yelling and arguing of today's news. And here's something that might surprise you. Dad might light up a cigarette on the drive. Smoking in 1955 was everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Doctors smoked. Pregnant women smoked. People smoked in hospitals, in offices, in restaurants. The health risks? Most people didn't know or didn't believe. Cigarette ads featured doctors recommending specific brands. Wild, right? Anyway, Dad arrives at work around 8 a.m. He parks his car, puts on his hat. Yes, men wore hats in 1955, and walks into the office, or the factory, or the shop, wherever he works. And work in 1955? That's a whole different world. All right, so let's talk about work. In 1955, the American economy was booming, like really booming. World War II had ended just 10 years earlier, and America was the only major industrial power that hadn't been bombed to rubble. Factories were running at full capacity. Jobs were plentiful. A man could walk into a factory with no experience and walk out with a job that paid enough to buy a house. Yeah. Read that again. No college degree. No special training. Just a willingness to work. And that job? It came with benefits, health insurance, pension, paid vacation. Things that people today fight for, they were standard in 1955. Now, the workday itself was different. Most men worked 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, occasionally Saturday mornings. The 40-hour work week was sacred. Overtime was paid. And when 5 o'clock hit, you went home. Period. There was no email to check at night. No Slack messages. No quick calls after dinner. Work stayed at work. But, and this is important, the work itself was often hard. Factory work was physical, loud, sometimes dangerous. Office work was repetitive, no computers. Everything was done by hand or typewriter. And the hierarchy was strict. You didn't talk back to your boss. You didn't share ideas in meetings. You did what you were told. Women in the workplace? That's complicated. In 1955, most married women didn't work. It was actually frowned upon. The expectation was, man earns money, woman runs the home. But single women? They worked, usually as secretaries, nurses, teachers, telephone operators, or retail clerks. And they were paid significantly less than men. For the same work, sometimes, that was just accepted. Now, let's talk about lunch. In 1955, lunch was an event. Many men went home for lunch. Yes, home. The office was close enough, and mom had lunch ready on the table. Or they went to a diner. A real American diner with counter seating, milkshakes, and a jukebox in the corner. A typical lunch might be a sandwich, ham, turkey, or roast beef, a cup of soup, a piece of pie, coffee, all for about 50 cents to $1 total. And people took their time. Lunch was 30 minutes to an hour. No eating at your desk, no working through lunch. After lunch, it's back to work until 5 p.m. And at 5 p.m., sharp, everyone leaves. The parking lot empties. The office goes dark. Time to go home. Now, while Dad's at work, let's rewind and see what Mom has been doing all day. Because, oh boy, Mom's day is intense. After the kids leave for school around 8 a.m., Mom doesn't sit down and watch TV. Television in 1955 was limited. Most channels only broadcast in the afternoon and evening anyway. No, Mom starts her chores. And in 1955, chores were actual work. First, the dishes. There's no dishwasher. Well, there are dishwashers, but most homes don't have them. So Mom stands at the sink and washes every plate, every cup, every fork by hand. Then, The beds. Every bed in the house has to be made. Sheets tucked tight, pillows fluffed, bedspreads smooth, hospital corners on the sheets. Yes, hospital corners. Then, the dusting. And the vacuuming. With a vacuum cleaner that weighs about 20 pounds and has a cloth bag that needs to be emptied. Then, the laundry. Oh, the laundry. In 1955, doing laundry was a full-day project. Most homes had a washing machine by now, but it was primitive by today's standards. You had to fill it manually sometimes. Add soap, run it through cycles, then wring out the clothes. Some machines had wringers attached. Others you did by hand. And dryers? Many homes didn't have them, so the clothes went outside, on a clothesline, in the backyard. Every shirt, every pair of pants, every sock, hung up one by one with wooden clothespins. If it rained, too bad. Wait for another day. And ironing? Everything got ironed. Everything. Shirts, pants, pillowcases, tablecloths, handkerchiefs. Mom probably spent 2 to 3 hours a week just ironing. Then there's the cooking. Lunch for herself. Nothing fancy. Maybe just a sandwich. But dinner? Dinner is a production. In 1955, dinner was made from scratch. There were no microwave dinners, no DoorDash, no frozen pizza that actually tasted good. Mom would start preparing dinner around 3 or 4 p.m. She might be making meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans, or roast chicken with carrots and gravy, or pot roast that's been cooking all day, or pork chops with applesauce and corn. Everything from scratch. The mashed potatoes, actual potatoes, peeled and boiled. The gravy, made from pan drippings. The vegetables, fresh, not canned. Well, sometimes canned, but often fresh. And while she's cooking, Mom might also be baking cookies or a pie for dessert. Ironing Dad's shirts for the week, mending clothes, sewing buttons, fixing tiers, writing letters to relatives, planning the grocery list. Oh, and somewhere in there, she's done her hair and makeup, put on a fresh dress, because Dad's coming home, and she wants to look nice. The pressure, the constant, unrelenting pressure. Honestly, housewives in 1955 were some of the hardest working people in America. They just weren't paid for it, weren't recognized for it. Many of them were deeply unhappy, but they didn't talk about it. That wasn't done. They just kept going. Meanwhile, the kids are at school, and school in 1955 was very, very different. Let's start with discipline. In 1955, teachers had complete authority. They could punish students physically, paddling, rulers on the knuckles, being made to stand in the corner. All legal, all common. If a kid got in trouble at school and went home to tell their parents, the parents would side with the teacher, and the kid would get punished again at home. There was no questioning authority. No parent-teacher conferences where mom yells at the teacher. The teacher was always right. Now, the classes themselves. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 3 R's. That was the focus. Basic skills taught through repetition and memorization. Math meant memorizing multiplication tables, chanting them out loud as a class. Reading meant reading aloud, going around the room, each student reading a paragraph. If you stumbled, embarrassment. Writing meant penmanship, actual handwriting practice, learning cursive, pages and pages of loops and swirls. And history? American history was taught with, let's say, a certain perspective. America was always the hero, always right. The Civil War, World War II, everything presented in a very specific way. But here's something interesting. School was shorter. The school day ended around 3 p.m. And homework? There was some, but not the mountains of it kids have today. After school, kids were free, and I mean free. They'd walk home, alone, remember, throw their books inside, and run out to play until dinner. No supervision, no scheduled activities, no parents watching their every move. They'd play in the street, ride bikes everywhere, build forts, explore the woods, get dirty, get hurt, come home with scraped knees, and no one panicked. It was freedom, real freedom, something most kids today will never experience. All right. So it's 5 p.m. Dad's car pulls into the driveway. The kids hear it and come running. Not because they're told to, but because that's just what you did. You greeted Dad when he came home. Dad walks through the front door, hangs up his hat, loosens his tie, and the whole family is there. Mom gives him a kiss. Kids hug his legs. Everyone asks about his day. It's like a scene from a movie, but in 1955, this was just Tuesday. Now, Dad might want to relax for a few minutes. He sits in his chair, the one nobody else sits in, and reads the evening paper. Maybe he pours himself a small drink, whiskey or bourbon. Nothing excessive, just a little something to unwind. Meanwhile, Mom finishes up dinner. And by about 6 p.m., the whole family sits down at the dining room table. Not the kitchen, the dining room, with a tablecloth, and the good dishes, and everyone in their assigned seats. And here's the thing. There's no TV during dinner. In fact, many families kept the TV off until after dinner as a rule. Dinner was family time. You talked, you shared. Dad asked about school. Mom talked about her day. Kids listened. The meal itself lasted 30 minutes to an hour. Rushing through dinner was considered rude. After dinner, the kids helped clear the table. This was expected. Even little kids had jobs, carrying plates to the kitchen, wiping down the table. And then came the evening. Now we can talk about television. In 1955, television was still relatively new. Many families had only gotten their first TV set in the last few years. And what a TV it was. A massive wooden cabinet, black and white screen. Color TV existed but was rare and expensive. Maybe 12 inches diagonal. Rabbit ear antennas on top that you had to constantly adjust. And the channels? Maybe 3 or 4, depending on where you lived. But here's the thing. TV watching in 1955 was a family event. Everyone gathered around the one TV in the house, usually in the living room, and watched together. Popular shows included I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners, Gunsmoke, The Ed Sullivan Show, and Father Knows Best. Everyone watched the same things. There was no choosing your own show, no arguing over the remote. Remotes barely existed. You watched what was on, and the content? Incredibly tame by today's standards. Married couples on TV slept in separate beds. You couldn't say certain words. Violence was minimal. Everything was wholesome. The kids might watch TV for an hour or two. Then it was homework time. At the kitchen table, with Mom checking their work. Bath time for the little ones. In 1955, kids didn't shower every day. Baths were maybe 2 or 3 times a week for younger children. Different standards. By 8:30 or 9 p.m., kids were in bed. And I mean in bed. No phones to scroll through, no tablets, no, just 5 more minutes. You went to bed, and you stayed there. After the kids were asleep, Mom and Dad might watch a little more TV together, or talk, or just sit in comfortable silence. Mom might do some mending, hand-sewing repairs to clothes. Dad might read a magazine, Life or Look, or Saturday Evening Post. And by 10 or 10:30 p.m., they're both in bed. Tomorrow, it all starts again. But wait, what about weekends? Weekends. The rhythm changes. Saturday morning, Dad might sleep in until 7 a.m., living the dream. Breakfast is a little more relaxed. Maybe pancakes. Maybe the kids are allowed to watch some cartoons. Saturday morning cartoons were becoming a thing. Then, chores. Saturday was workday, just not at the office. Dad's outside mowing the lawn with a push mower. No motors, just muscle. He's washing the car by hand in the driveway. He's fixing that squeaky door. He's painting the fence. Men in 1955 did their own repairs. They had to. You didn't call someone for every little thing. That was expensive. And kind of embarrassing, honestly. Kids have chores too. Raking leaves, pulling weeds, helping Dad in the garage. Mom's doing the heavy cleaning. The stuff that doesn't happen during the week. Washing windows, cleaning the oven, scrubbing floors on hands and knees. By afternoon, the work is done. Now what? Maybe the family goes for a drive. Just a drive. Gas is cheap. The weather is nice. Let's go see something. Maybe they visit relatives, grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles. Extended family lived closer together in 1955, and visiting was more common. Maybe there's a Little League game. Baseball was king in 1955. Kids played, parents watched, and everyone got ice cream after. Saturday night, date night for Mom and Dad. The kids stay home with a babysitter. The teenage girl from down the street, paid 50 cents an hour. Mom and Dad go out, maybe dinner at a nice restaurant, maybe a movie at the local theater, maybe dancing at the club. They dress up, really dress up. Suit and tie for Dad, nice dress for Mom. Going out was an occasion, and they're home by 11 p.m. Respectable hours. Sunday. Sunday was different. Sunday was church day. In 1955, most Americans went to church. Not just Christmas and Easter, but every single Sunday. The whole family, dressed in their Sunday best. Dad in his suit, Mom in her nicest dress. Kids looking uncomfortable but clean. Church lasted about an hour. Then maybe brunch, or straight home for Sunday dinner. The big meal of the week, roast beef or ham. All the trimmings, extended family often joined. The afternoon was quiet. The Sabbath was for rest. No shopping. Most stores were closed on Sundays. That was actually the law in many places. Maybe some reading, maybe listening to the radio, maybe a nap. And by Sunday evening, everyone's getting ready for the week ahead. Monday's coming. The cycle continues. So, here we are. We've walked through a day, a week, in 1955 America. And you might be thinking, that sounds kind of nice, actually. And you know what? Some of it was. Family dinners together, every night. Kids playing outside, free and unsupervised. Communities where everyone knew each other. A single income supporting a whole family. Jobs with benefits and security. Sundays that were actually restful. Less noise, less rush, less chaos. There was a simplicity to life in 1955 that we've lost. A rhythm, a structure. People weren't staring at screens 12 hours a day. They weren't drowning in notifications. They weren't comparing themselves to strangers on the internet. They were just living, day by day, present in their own lives. And that's worth something. That's worth remembering. But, and this is a big but, we need to talk about what 1,955 got wrong. Because it got a lot wrong. That perfect family scene we painted, it was only perfect for some people. In 1955, America was segregated. Black Americans couldn't drink from the same water fountains, eat at the same restaurants, go to the same schools as white Americans. That suburban dream, it was deliberately, systematically denied to black families. Banks wouldn't give them loans. Neighborhoods had covenants preventing them from moving in. The 1,950 seconds were a nightmare for anyone who wasn't white. And women? Those housewives we talked about? Many of them were miserable, trapped in a role they didn't choose, with no economic independence, no identity beyond wife and mother. Depression was rampant, but it wasn't called depression. It was called nerves, and it was treated with pills and silence. Betty Friedan would later call it the problem that has no name. Domestic violence, swept under the rug. What happened in the home stayed in the home. Divorce? Nearly impossible and deeply shameful. Women stayed in bad marriages because they had no way out. And if you were gay, God help you. Homosexuality was illegal. People lost jobs, went to prison, were forced into treatment. The 1,950 seconds were brutal for anyone who was different, anyone who didn't fit the mold. So when we look back at 1,955 with nostalgia, we need to remember we're looking at a very specific, very limited version of America. The white, suburban, middle-class version. And even within that version, not everyone was happy. So where does that leave us? Here's what I think. We shouldn't try to go back to 1,955. We can't, and we shouldn't want to. Too much was wrong. But maybe we can take the good parts. The family dinners. Can we bring those back? Put down our phones for 30 minutes and actually talk? The community. Can we know our neighbors again? Wave at people on the street? The simplicity. Can we stop filling every moment with content, with stimulation, with noise? The work-life balance. Can we leave work at work? Stop checking email at midnight? The childhood freedom. Can we let our kids play outside? Get dirty? Take risks? Maybe. Maybe the best of 1,955 isn't about going back in time. It's about being intentional, choosing what matters, protecting what's precious. Family, community, presence, rest. These things don't require a time machine. They just require a choice. So, that was a normal day in 1955 America. A world without smartphones or internet, without streaming or social media. A world where life moved slower, families stayed closer, and the future seemed bright. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was something. Something we lost along the way. And maybe, just maybe, something worth remembering. Thanks for watching. If this video made you think, if it made you feel something, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like this coming. Stories about the way things were, the way things changed, and maybe the way things could be again. See you in the next one.